Hey, so it's been a while since I talked about a versus battle video from that 4th grade ninja war, and I felt like this was an interesting topic. Obviously, this wasn't an actual fight that happened in the main series, but you know what I'm trying to say. Anyway, I talked about this one before, and it's been a couple years since then, so this will be a part of my Was I Wrong video series. Itachi and Sasuke versus Madara. And the versions of these characters are what's going to be depicted in the thumbnail. So, Edo Itachi versus EMS Sasuke versus Edo Madara. For clarity, this will be Edo Madara that took on the 5 Kage and later went on to regroup with Obito and fight the Ninja Alliance, meaning he'll have his EMS and Rinnegan respectively, versus EMS Sasuke with all of his EMS feats right up until he acquires his Rinnegan from Hagoromo, so meaning his fight with Kabuto right up until the point where he fought blind Sage Madara. And then Edo Itachi is, just Edo Itachi. So before we get into the conversation about any of the Susanoo, since I'm sure it'll come up in everyone's mind and will likely be one of the deciding factors in y'all's opinion regarding the outcome of this fight, that is, let's for right now talk about a situation on the ground without everyone using their respective Susanoo, excluding the small ribcage Susanoo. Anyway, they can use that. So the first thing I want to bring up is something that many people may not think of when talking about Madara versus battle videos. And granted, I'm not saying this is going to be a guaranteed factor in this fight, but I could see it happening. And that is Madara's attitude. More specifically, Madara's attitude towards anyone who isn't Hashirama. For example, despite the fact that the 5 Kage did pretty well against Madara all things considered, and that they were even able to catch him off guard a couple times, the fact is he was still, for the most part, playing around with them. Like, in 2 separate sentences, he pretty much explains his approach to this fight. At the beginning, he says, "Perfect, Kage will make a perfect test for this." And at the end, when he says, "What adult will go full force when fighting mere children?" And so where am I getting at with this? Well, it's just as likely he'll have the same attitude towards both Itachi and Sasuke. Even more so due to them being Uchiha specifically. Like, he might say something similar to what he said at the Kage at the beginning of the fight. Like, "Oh, since you both had the Mangekyō Sharingan, you'll both make this test of mine worthwhile." And it's likely that he might still have the same type of fighting mere children mindset when fighting Itachi and Sasuke, especially since, again, they're both Uchiha. Like, Madara made it pretty apparent to Tsunade that he hates weakness, and he hates a weak Senju even more. So I can see it just as likely as Madara saying something similar to the Uchiha brothers, like him saying, like, "Weakness of any kind disgusts me, a weak Uchiha disgusts me even more." Now, don't misunderstand me, I'm not saying Itachi and Sasuke are weak, and I'm not necessarily comparing them both as a team to the 5 Kage. But what I am saying is that Madara might have the same attitude and mindset towards them in this fight. Which, if he does so, then like with the 5 Kage, this might lead to Madara not taking the fight as seriously as he needs to, and may lead to himself getting caught a couple times. Now, I know it probably took me a bit too long to explain that, but I just wanted to make it clear that in character, this might end up being how Madara takes the fight and how the fight starts out. And Itachi and Sasuke, by contrast, will not have the same attitude towards Madara. I mean, Itachi kind of goes without saying, he almost never underestimates his opponent. But Sasuke, knowing that he's fighting the actual legendary Madara Uchiha, will not have the same mindset that he had at the beginning of the fight with Kabuto. Because at the beginning of the fight with Kabuto, Sasuke was low-key sleeping on him. And I just have the feeling that won't be the same case here, especially not with Itachi being there as well. So for now, let's operate on the assumption that Madara will not take this fight super serious, at least at the start. So if that's the case, how does the actual fight go? So the first thing I want to cover is something that I think is not going to play a huge factor in this, and that is Amaterasu. As OP and useful as Amaterasu is, despite the fact that it's potentially a one-shot, the problem here is that when it comes to Madara, I don't think it's going to matter. For starters, since this is EMS Madara, I imagine the first thing that Madara is going to be able to do is dodge it in time. For example, Obito was able to see Sasuke building up the chakra in his eye in order to launch Amaterasu, and then Obito proceeded to spin his staff and block it. Obito even said himself that it was hardly a surprise attack. And I mean, yeah, that was 10 Tails Obito, but I don't think there's going to be much difference when it comes to being able to see Sasuke or Itachi building up the chakra in their eyes in order to launch Amaterasu. And if Madara has his Uchiha fan, I imagine he'll be able to block it similar to how Obito did and possibly even launch it back at them. Now, let's say for a second that through some crazy teamwork, Itachi and Sasuke could land Amaterasu on Madara, which I definitely could see given how smart Itachi and Sasuke are, especially given how Madara might be sleeping on the brothers. But the problem here is even if Madara gets hit with it, he's got a couple counters. Both are applied to the Rinnegan. One, he can use Shinra Tensei to get the flames off of him, or 2, he can use the Preta path to absorb the flame. For the second one, if the flames are already on him, maybe there's a chance he can't still absorb it, although I'm not really sure why that would be a thing, but I've heard arguments about that, so maybe it's worth mentioning. And even if those aren't available options, if Madara has his armor on, as in his actual physical armor, he could just lob it off like he did when Sasuke launched Amaterasu on him. Speaking of that moment, yes, like Sasuke was able to actually land Amaterasu on Madara, but Madara had just lost his eyes after being revived with the Rinnegan Tensei, and he also didn't have any Sage Jutsu Sensory either. Plus, I'm pretty sure the excitement of being brought back to life allowed for more opportunity to get hit with Amaterasu than anything else. And even then, Madara still just took his armor off and he was fine. So yeah, as much as I like Amaterasu, I don't think that's going to play much of a factor here. Now, I mentioned the Rinnegan earlier, so let's talk about how the Uchiha brothers might handle its abilities, particularly Chaotic Shinra Tensei and Shubaku Tensei, since I feel like of all the Rinnegan abilities, those will be the most dangerous. You know, setting aside the soul absorption, obviously, in this fight. So when it comes to Shinra Tensei, I feel like Itachi specifically won't be affected too much, as he'd probably be able to put up a Susanoo to defend, and by extension the Yadamir as well. And plus, all that combined with being an Edo, I think he'll be the one that'll be the most safe after the attack. Now, Sasuke, on the other hand, is up in the air. I'm not entirely sure if his Susanoo on its own, without the Yadamir, could entirely withstand a Chaotic Shinra Tensei from Madara. Like, Pains was capable of destroying the entire Leaf Village. Madara should be able to do even more damage than that. Now, having said that, if Sasuke is in his Susanoo by the time Madara launches the jutsu, I'm fully willing to believe Sasuke could tank it, but the Susanoo might get damaged a good bit. Like, maybe enough to where Sasuke can't use it for a while. I think the best thing for the brothers in this case would be Sasuke has to be close to Itachi so that when it happens, Itachi could cover them both, he and Sasuke, with the Susanoo and block it with the Yadamir. Now, when it comes to Shubaku Tensei, that's a different story. In all honesty, Itachi and Sasuke could, in theory, play the same tactic that Itachi, Bee, and Naruto did to destroy Nagato's planetary devastation. But there's a chance that Madara's Shubaku Tensei would be much stronger and therefore tougher to destroy than Nagato's, and even if it's not, there's also a question of if Itachi and Sasuke could replicate the same amount of damage output that KCM Naruto, Bee, and Itachi were able to do. Which, I mean, who knows, maybe they could. After all, it's not exactly certain whether or not it was necessary for all three of them, as in Naruto, Bee, and Itachi, to destroy Nagato's Shubaku Tensei. As in, maybe it only took 2 out of the 3. Like, maybe it was still been destroyed if only Naruto and Itachi hit it, Naruto and Bee hit it, or maybe even Itachi and Bee. Now, don't misunderstand, I'm not saying that's a fact or anything. Besides, Itachi did suggest that all 3 of them used their strongest attack, but just the fact that Bee and Naruto were there, it might have just been like, well, we're all here, so we might as well launch our strongest jutsu just to be safe type of deal. So if we do go by that, then Itachi could use the Yasaka beads, and Sasuke could use the Inferno style Susanoo arrow to possibly destroy Shubaku Tensei. But again, I'm also willing to believe that since it's from Madara, that the 2 of them together wouldn't be able to get the job done. If that's the case, then yeah, they're pretty much done for. Unless we grant that they aren't already in their Susanoos by the time they get trapped, then if that is the case, maybe they can go into their Susanoos and break out of it that way. So the next thing I want to cover is genjutsu. And if I'm being honest, aside from Tsukuyomi, I don't know if I could see genjutsu playing much of a factor here either. I mean, for one thing, everyone in this fight is going to be an Uchiha, obviously. So on that alone, both sides are already going to expect some kind of Sharingan-based genjutsu. Now, don't mistake me, that's not me saying there's no way of either side being caught with it. But when it comes to Madara, if it's not Tsukuyomi specifically, I can't see him being caught in genjutsu for too long, since he has both EMS and Rinnegan. And I know that there's been arguments back and forth about whether or not the Rinnegan can break Sharingan Genjutsu, since Sasuke with the Rinnegan and or Perfect Susanoo was able to resist the infinite Tsukuyomi. But even if you want to say that it couldn't work on Tsukuyomi specifically, Sharingan or even Sasuke's EMS Genjutsu might still be broken out of either with EMS or the Rinnegan. Especially since the Rinnegan is the progression of the Sharingan. But even then, Tsukuyomi isn't even the end-all GG of the match. Like, as in, even if with how powerful it is, if the opponent has an MS, and preferably is an Uchiha, they can still break out. But I think when it comes to Genjutsu, Tsukuyomi is the only one that'll be able to hold off Madara long enough to use their only real win con in this fight, which would be the Totsuka Blade. And the thing is, Itachi would have to be quick with the stab, even if Madara is caught. because the whole Tsukuyomi experience thing happens in literally a picosecond, according to the Itachi light novel. Now, with how fast Itachi is, plus Sasuke being there, possibly holding Madara with his Susanoo hand or something, while he's already caught in Tsukuyomi, then this could be possible. So that's a play Itachi and Sasuke could make, especially if this is a Madara who's not taking the fight 100% serious. Now, the next thing I want to bring up is Kirin, because y'all know I'm a Kirin hype beast, but in this particular fight, I'm not sure it'll be too helpful. For starters, if Itachi is able to put up the Susanoo in time to block it with just one eye, then Madara, who has a perfect EMS and Rinnegan, should be able to do the same thing. Speaking of the Rinnegan, this might end up backfiring since Madara could just straight up absorb the jutsu in the first place. Now, what I do think could be an interesting tact here is that if Sasuke were to launch Kirin and Madara goes into the trouble of absorbing it, this might provide Itachi with an opportunity to stab them with the Totsuka blade while he's doing so. This brings me to the subject of whether or not the Totsuka blade can be absorbed by the Rinnegan. There are some who are convinced that the Rinnegan can't absorb it since it's a spiritual weapon and not a ninja, but those who are convinced that it can be absorbed say so because since it's chakra, and chakra is a type of spiritual energy and it's a spiritual sword, it should still apply to the Totsuka blade. I can see both arguments, so what I will say is that if it can be absorbed, then this plan might not work in the first place anyway. But if it can't be absorbed, then what the brothers could is Sasuke launches Kirin, and as Madara is absorbing the jutsu, Itachi can stab Madara with the Totsuka blade if he's quick enough. And if this is a Madara who, again, isn't taking the fight seriously at the start, then I can actually see this happening. Though, conversely, if this is a Madara who is fighting as seriously as he should be, then I can also see it just as likely Madara being able to do something like dodge it or block it in time, even while absorbing Kirin. There's also the possibility that if Madara has his Uchiha fan, that he could potentially not only block Kirin, but also reflect it. Though I could still see Madara being slightly damaged due to the AoE shockwave from Kirin or something. So now the next segment I want to go to is the 25 wood clones, as I'm sure that'll also be brought up. So in all honesty, if Madara was to play it smart, he might not even use the Susanoo for the wood clones, because with Sasuke having a slightly bigger Susanoo than the wood clones, and Itachi having the Yadamir and Totsuka blade, it would make fighting the Susanoo wood clones much easier when they're in their Susanoos. Especially in the case of Itachi, they'd be much bigger targets for the Totsuka blade. Whereas if Madara keeps it to just the clones on the ground, it'd be tougher to fight them, as it's probably more difficult to hit a faster moving target on the ground with the Totsuka blade than it is a big old Susanoo target. So what I will say is that if Madara chooses to use the Susanoo for the clones, I actually do think Itachi and Sasuke could beat them, especially if we do give Sasuke the perfect Susanoo. I know I haven't talked about the perfect Susanoo yet because I was wanting to save it to the section of the video where I talk about everyone in this video fighting with their respective Susanoos, at least to the fullest extent that they could. But I know there's arguments back and forth about Sasuke having the perfect Susanoo while he's in his EMS. So without going onto that subject too much, since I've already talked about it multiple times in the past, what I will say is if you do go on the side of the perfect Susanoo, then Itachi and Sasuke clear the wood clones in or out of their Susanoos. But if you don't, then it's much more difficult, especially if Madara doesn't have the clones go into their Susanoo. Also, something that most people tend to forget is that 25 isn't really the upper limit of the clones that Madara can summon. Like, he used 25 as a punchline for a joke against the 5 Kage. It's very likely he can summon many more. Like, it was shown that he was effortlessly able to make 25. So if we say that at the worst he can only summon twice as many, that means he can summon up to 50. So 50 Madaras in or out of their Susanoos plus the real Madara? I don't know, that seems like a lot for Itachi and Sasuke to deal with. Now, real quick before I get to the Susanoo battle here in a second, I want to talk about the 3 bigger win cons for Madara specifically. The first one is the wood style pollen jutsu that he used against the 5 Kage, which would definitely be a big problem for Sasuke. Like, Itachi is not going to be affected by this at all, but Sasuke could be down and out with this jutsu. But if Itachi acts quick enough, he can just go into his Susanoo and chop through the wood style and possibly get him out. If that's not the case, like Sasuke, if you want to give Sasuke more leeway, then Sasuke could go into his Susanoo quick enough and just jump out, I guess, or chop through the wood style also. I can see that happening as well. But if Sasuke doesn't act quick enough, I could also see him being taken out a little bit, early into the fight, and then Itachi having to go and get him, which would hinder the teamwork aspect, because I don't know if Edo Itachi can take on Edo Madara alone, especially if Madara already has wood style clones on the field by this time. So the second one is one that's a lot more immediate apparent, and that is the 2 meteors that Madara can just drop on Itachi and Sasuke if he wanted to. Like, if he felt pressure to do so, he can drop the second one, but I'm pretty sure 1 is all it would take. Now, if you do go by the Yamamiri description in the data book, then this might not even matter, as in the Yamamiri could potentially defend against the meteors altogether, especially if you are of the opinion that the Yamamiri is omnidirectional. But if you aren't, then, I mean, Itachi could just put up the mirror, I guess, and not to block it. And obviously this means that Itachi is safe, but Sasuke would be cooked. Whether he's in or out of his Susanoo, it does not matter. The best thing for Sasuke is, like what I brought up earlier, he would have to be near Itachi so that Itachi can cover them both with his Susanoo and deflect it with the Yamamiri. That's the only thing I could see. If they're not able to get into the Susanoo quick enough, then they're cooked. But considering that Itachi was able to, again, block Kirin in time, I don't think he'll have trouble getting Susanoo up in time to block the meteor. So I'll say that. And then the third thing is obviously the biggest win con for Madara when it comes to an Edo fighter is obviously the Soul Steal from the Rinnegan. Now, this might not be as big of a problem for Itachi and Sasuke if they're just fighting Madara alone, as through some kind of teamwork they might be able to hold off Madara and prevent him from being able to use the Soul Steal on Itachi specifically. But I can see this happening more in Madara's favor if he does this during the 25 to 50 wood clone section. Like, for example, he was able to pressure the Raikage enough to catch him and put him under a genjutsu. It might be the same case here where he's able to put enough pressure on the brothers in order to catch Itachi and use the Soul Steal. But if I'm being honest, like, Itachi's good at fake outs, especially with the Crow clones. So I could see him pulling that off a couple times, but this is a tack that might still play in Madara's favor given the added pressure of both 25 or worst case 50 Susanoo wood clone. Now, I want to talk about Kodo Matsukami since I'm pretty sure that will also get brought up in the comments as well. And while this doesn't make sense chronologically because the Crow would be inside of Naruto, for the sake of conversation, let's, twist this a little bit that A, Itachi still has the Crow, and B, it's the version of Kodo Matsukami that Danzo was trying to use on Mifune, because if I'm not mistaken, the version of Kodo Matsukami that Naruto had in his possession needs straight eye contact to work. And if that's the case, I see it less likely the Crow being able to launch the jutsu on Madara, as I established earlier. But if it's the version of Kodo Matsukami that Danzo attempted to use against Mifune, I think it might be a little more likely that Madara will be caught, especially if A, Madara is not putting enough effort into the fight to really take it as seriously as it needs to, and B, due to that, Itachi and Sasuke through some decent teamwork could pressure Madara enough to where he doesn't even notice that he's being controlled by Kodo Matsukami. Now, it's really odd because we've never seen an Uchiha be placed under this specific Kodo Matsukami. Like, Shisui was convinced that this jutsu was going to work on Fugaku, so that could be something we could use, but that's really all we have in terms of whether or not it's a possibility this could work on Madara. The other possibility is that if Madara doesn't know about Kodo Matsukami specifically. Like, it's one thing for him to know about Izanami, but like, Kodo Matsukami is specifically Shisui's jutsu. We don't really know if anyone else in the past has had this jutsu before. So I don't know if just the fact that Madara wouldn't know anything about it could leave him susceptible to being caught with. But if you do want to grant Madara some leeway there and like say that with it being Madara Uchiha of all people, because Madara seems to be rarely aware of a lot of things regarding to the Sharingan and all that. So I could see, like, if he mentions something like, oh, that's the Kodo Matsukami, nice try, I could totally see that happening. But if you don't want to give him that, then who knows, they could pull it off a win. You never know. Now, as I mentioned, Izanami, I know that would also come up too. That, I think, is less likely to land than Kodo Matsukami because, obviously, again, this is Madara Uchiha who is likely aware of what Izanami is and the preparations needed to pull it off. So even if they try to attempt that through some teamwork, then I would probably see Madara being able to avoid that at some point. So I don't think Izanami is a win con here either. And then I guess the last thing I'll say is what I was mentioning earlier is if each fighter goes into their fullest extent Susanoo, as in Itachi with the big old half-body armored Susanoo with the Yamamiri and Totsuka blade, Sasuke with his Susanoo that was used to fight Jubito, and then Madara with the Perfect Susanoo. So if it's the scenario I just pitched, then I think Madara still wins because, yeah, Itachi has the Totsuka blade, but he has to actually physically pierce Madara. Like, he can't just stab the Susanoo's foot and it be, you know, sealed away completely. Like, that's not how it works. He could probably chop the feet off and whatever and damage the Susanoo. That's fine. I'll give you, that's fair game. But regards to Madara, like, he actually has to stab Madara. And don't get me wrong, I feel like with the size of Sasuke Susanoo and the Totsuka blade and the Yadamir, like, I still think it could give Madara some decent trouble, at least a little bit. But I think ultimately, with how massive Madara Susanoo would be, I think he would still hold the edge. Now, conversely, if we still give Sasuke the Perfect Susanoo, then I actually think it's the other way around. Because as strong as Madara is, the combination of Itachi Susanoo and the Perfect Susanoo from Sasuke, I actually think would make Madara would actually be able to overwhelm Madara, in all honesty. Especially if we do something that I've heard talked about a lot, and that is that Itachi could just give Sasuke the Totsuka blade and or Yadamir. He can give them both, and I think that would actually be the smarter decision, especially if we give Sasuke the Perfect Susanoo. And if that's the case, I actually do see it more likely that the brothers could win. And even if we don't give Sasuke the Susanoo and only give him the Susanoo size that was used to fight Jubito, if we still give him the Totsuka blade and the Yadamir, that will still help them as far as chances go at being able to stab Madara specifically. So what I will say is that at the end of this fight, TLDR, if Madara is not taking this fight super serious, then I could see the brothers being able to pull out a win like 6, maybe a 7 out of 10 times. But if Madara is taking this fight as seriously as he needs to, I don't think so. I think Madara takes it like 9 out of 10 times, maybe even 10 out of 10 times. It just depends on how serious Madara decides to take this fight. I know that seems like a cop out, but again, depending on his attitude, he could get, you know, caught off guard. And, you know, with how smart Itachi and Sasuke are collectively, I think they can come up with a strategy to possibly use that to their advantage and catch Madara with Kodomatsukami, and maybe even use the Tsukuyomi Totsuka blade stab combo that I mentioned earlier, or something to that effect. But other than that, I just don't see them being able to win. But there's the video. Hope y'all did enjoy. Let me know in the comments what you guys think. Let me know if I missed anything. Be sure to like the video if you haven't already. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Click the bell for more notifications. And until the next one, like and snow, out.